This is The Rebel Attic, episode 14. Welcome everyone back to The Rebel Attic. Today I am joined by Bill Kenyon. He is a coach and helps individuals and businesses alike be the best versions of themselves. He offers insights on this episode that he has gleaned over his career in various roles to help you become and do better. You can find him at billkenyon.com, and I will put that link in the show notes. Please welcome Bill Kenyon. Okay, Bill, thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just great, Kevin.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, cool Michigan morning, and you already got your run in.
I got my run in already. Yep. I'm doing a program that does it based on time, not distance, and so today was an hour and 5 minutes.
Okay.
Kind of an odd length of time, but that's what I did. So.
And how much distance did that equate to?
Well, that ended up today being a little less than 6 miles, about 5.7. I'm an old timer now, so I have to. I don't run as fast as I used to.
Well, you could outrun most of us, I think, because you do it a lot.
Well, that's it. It's been a lifelong pursuit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and you've created a habit.
Exactly, and habits are they are critical to having success at anything. So.
Well, I guess we can start there. Talk about habits and what they mean to you, and I guess how you've used them.
Yeah, I think first of all, I refer a lot to books I've read and things like that. And I actually had an opportunity 2 weeks ago, as a part of my affiliation with the Maxwell Leadership Team. We had a conference in Orlando, and one of the speakers was James Clear, who wrote the book Atomic Habits.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to read a really good book on habits, you can do a lot worse than Atomic Habits. It's a great book. But one of the things that I've learned over time is that small things done consistently create great results. And so you can't, if you're going to, the typical weekend warrior when it comes to fitness, it doesn't work. Because if you only work out 1 or 2 days on the weekend, and then the rest of the week you don't do anything, you're not having enough consistency to get yourself where you need to be. And so it is better to do, I'll just use walking as an example. To do a half-hour walk every day is better than doing a single 2.5-hour walk on one day of the weekend. Might be the same number of minutes, but it's the consistency day in and day out and how that benefits your body that helps create the result you want. Same thing is true with any other habit, whether it's daily planning. I use a planner that I use every day, and I try to plan a given day the night before. And it does two things for me. Number one, it gets me in a mindset of knowing that I have these things to do the next day, but it also helps me sleep better because I've already got the day planned. I don't wake up in the middle of the night and think, I got to remember to do this or something like that, because I've already thought through all that. And I tend to sleep better as a result.
Okay.
So there's lots of little things like that. And a lot of people have talked about, how long does it take to form a habit? However long it takes. There is no, there's been research done on how long. It depends on the habit. And there are two things related to habits. Number one, you want to try to create good habits, but you also want to try to eliminate bad habits. Whether we know it or whether we like it or not, we all have habits. Some of them are good and some of them aren't so good. My father and mother were both lifelong smokers. And finally, when my mother started to have some heart issues, she said to my dad, we both need, I need to quit, but I need your help because I can't do it by myself. And they did. They both quit cold turkey. And when she passed away, my brother and sister and I thought, well, he'll go back to it. He didn't. To his credit, he did not go back to smoking. And when people tell me, well, I just can't quit, well, guess what? My father at the time would have been 76. To get a 76-year-old to quit a lifelong habit couldn't have been easy.
Or to change anything at
exactly.
that age. Yeah.
But he did it, to his credit. Now, sadly, a lot of the physical damage had already been done, but he had some real serious circulation issues that ultimately contributed to his passing away. But
which is harder, Starting a good habit or quitting a bad habit?
Well, that's a great question, Kevin, and I think it's my the least helpful answer on the planet. It depends, right? And it depends on how strongly you want to do either. If you say to yourself, I'm committed to creating this good habit. I always ask my coach. I typically ask my coaching clients, on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to making that change? And if they say anything less than a 10, it's not likely to happen. Same thing with getting rid of a bad habit. If you're going to try to quit a bad habit, now I've done some things recently relative to my eating habits, and I've eliminated certain things with some of my eating habits. But what I've done is, instead of just eliminating them, I've replaced them with healthy things. So I used to snack on these really totally unnutritious and these goldfish crackers,
Sure.
But I replaced them with almonds, which have good healthy fats, and pistachios. And one of the issues I had, here I am, I'm a healthy runner, but I had some high cholesterol. And I actually had a doctor wanted to put me on a statin, and I said, I'm already on some blood pressure medicine. I don't need to keep feeding big pharma,
Yeah.
And so I told I didn't even talk to him. It was one of his nurses that called me, and I said, I'd rather try to do this naturally. Well, I took my total cholesterol down from 230 to 190 just by changing some of that food stuff.
Wow.
And I have an appointment with him on October 2nd. I can't wait to see him and say, see, I told you.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good story. I like to hear things like that. Yeah.
So, but it required a change in a habit. And it wasn't a hard change to make. I mean, and the other thing I've been careful about is the quantity. I want to eat those things, but you don't want to overdo it. I mean, almonds have fat in them. Again, it's healthy fat, but you don't want to overdo anything.
Sure.
Anything you're doing, everything in moderation. Exactly. So, but I think those habits, apply to so many different things. You know that I do a lot with leadership. Well, a great leadership habit is to regularly affirm the people you work with, sincerely and specifically. And it's easy to let that slide. You get so busy, so wrapped up in your day-to-day that you don't take time to say something to the receptionist about, hey, I overheard you talking to one of our customers, and you just really treated them the way we want our customers to be treated. Thank you so much. Takes, 15 seconds maybe? And yet, it's so easy to let that slide. Again, if we think about it in terms of we want to make a habit of doing that, we can actually track it. We can create a system for tracking how often we affirm people. Now, that sounds like, well, we shouldn't have to do that. No, we shouldn't have to, but guess what? We're human beings, and we don't pay enough attention sometimes to those things. And boy, there's a lot that can be said for just affirming the people that work with us.
Yeah. Well, there's an old saying, keeps, I'm blanking on it now, keep score to keep track.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
exactly. And the other thing that is often, what gets measured gets done. Same principle, basically. Probably the greatest example, one of the examples that I've heard about is comedian Jerry Seinfeld. He has this well-known habit of writing at least a joke a day, something funny to write at least once a day, and he just uses a wall calendar, and every day he does it, he puts a big red X, and he does not feel he's been successful if he goes through a month and not every day is marked off.
Interesting.
That's his goal. His goal is to have a big X in every square on the calendar.
And he's had a lot of hit X's.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, my mentor, John Maxwell, people ask him, well, John, how can I become a writer? And he says, write.
Yeah.
I mean, just get started. You're not going to be good at first,
Yeah.
but you just have to do it. But again, consistency. I'm thinking about a book, taking some of the content from a weekly e-newsletter that I do and converting it into a book. And one of the thought leaders with the Maxwell Group is an author by the name of Jeff Henderson. And Jeff told me, he said 500 words a day, 4 days a week. And that's just a great target. He says, first of all, it means you don't have to do it every day, which gives your mind a little bit of a break. But if you have a goal like that, and again, track it, you'll eventually have your book.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on that right now.
Very cool. Yeah, I think you told me about that a little while ago.
Yeah, a little while ago. And it hasn't happened yet, has it? So,
it happens.
But there again, it takes that consistency. And
writing a book is no small feat. So
no, and even though I've got a lot of the content already there from my newsletter, I need to go. I'm going back now and trying to find newsletters with common themes so that I can blend them into chapters. And even that's not easy. I've been doing it for 6 years. So
a lot to go through.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned you in your coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So there's coaching, then there's like business consulting. How is what you do different than, let's say, an average business consultant?
It's another good question, Kevin. So consulting, I think of consulting in two frames, and I actually do one of them, but not the other. And one form of consulting is somebody who has some expertise in a particular industry, and they go in and work with companies to help them do what they do better, based on the knowledge they have from their life's experience. About the only area, there are two areas where I could possibly do that. One would be the world of hospice, because I was the CEO of our local nonprofit hospice for 10 years. The other one might be nonprofit fundraising. I was the chief development officer at Adrian College for 12 years. For one of those things, the fundraising piece, I put in my own personal vision for my business that I will not, in capital letters, do fundraising consulting. I had raised money at Adrian College for 12 years, and the bulk of what I did at hospice was fundraising because we built that beautiful hospice home. So fundraising is not something I want to consult about.
That's understandable.
And I really don't have specific knowledge about another industry where I could do that kind of consulting. The other kind of consulting is more generic, and by that I mean things like strategic planning, team building, working with organizations on communication skills, because communication is such a critical aspect of what we do. I don't have to know the specifics of an industry to help in that arena. So I've had the privilege of, I think I've had 5 organizations that I've done strategic planning with. And it's been, as far as I can tell, it's been successful in all 5. And I enjoy that. It's challenging in the sense that because every organization is so different number of people, obviously different goals and different visions for the organizations, things like that. It's challenging, and yet it gives me a great opportunity to learn. I believe so much in lifelong learning. And for me to go in and learn about what some of these organizations do is, quite frankly, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I learn a lot. So that's the other kind of consulting. The other side of what I do, though, is really more related to individuals. And, coaching, for example, I do one-on-one coaching with people. I had the opportunity to apply for a gift from one of my major sponsors for the Live to Lead program that I host here in town. And they wanted to know my mission statement. Well, I had never written a mission statement for myself. So just off the cuff, I said, well, I help individuals and organizations become better versions of themselves. And as I reflected on that, I thought, perfect. That's exactly what I try to do. So keeping that in mind, one-on-one coaching is certainly designed to help the individual become a better version of themselves. And coaching and mentorship are different. We can talk about that in a little bit. But the coaching model that we use is one of inquiry. We come from a place of curiosity, and we actually help the coaching client figure out for themselves what it is they need to do to get better. And the reason we don't tell them what to do is because everybody's different. There's 8 billion people on this planet, and with one exception, every one of them is different. So that's the way that coaching happens. And we, as a general rule, most of my coaching clients struggle with 2 or 3 different things. Number one, I've got a couple of coaching clients, they're just overwhelmed with the sheer volume of work they have to do. And they have trouble figuring out how to prioritize and things like that. Well, I can't tell them what their priorities are, but I can get them to list all the things on their plate and then help them think through what is literally what is the most important thing on this list. If you knew you were going to die tomorrow and you knew you had something that had to get done today, and you only had time to do the one thing, what would that one thing be on your list of 30?
Yeah.
And that's a way of prioritizing.
Gotcha.
There are other ways to do it, but that's one way. And then the other thing that I find with a lot of my clients is they have limiting beliefs about themselves. Well, I could never do that. Well, why not? Why couldn't you? Well, I just couldn't. No, that's not the answer. That's not the why. Why do you think you couldn't do that? And it was interesting because when I started working with a coach myself, I had as much as I've been able to do in my life and career and stuff, I still have some self-esteem issues. Just something about the way I was raised or whatever. And so my coach asked me to send her a copy of my resume. So I did. And it had, the hospice position. It had, VP at Adrian College. It had VP at a former savings and loan, things like that. And she said, now, she asked me, she said, if I was sending you that resume about myself, what would you say to me about that resume? I said, man, that's a great resume. You've done a lot of fascinating things. She said, and then she asked me, well, why can't you say that to yourself about yourself? And I didn't have a good answer for her.
Yeah.
And it was just, a little bit of it is what we often hear called imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
that why would anybody listen to me? That kind of thing. Well, I've got some things worth sharing. I've had some success in my life. What led to that success? I just, before we got started here, I was telling you a little bit about this program I do called the Passport to Success. And it was just something I created as a part of a Toastmasters speech years ago, but it fits what I do, both with, I use my running sometimes as a metaphor for my success, because what I do with my running applies to other things. I use the same process to think through a plan for building the hospice home that I used for my running to plan to achieve a certain level of success in a marathon, something like that. And it applies to all those different situations. So why not share that with people?
Yeah, I can see why it would, because if it's habits, if it's specific things to do, you can just take them and send them to this instead of that now.
Exactly. And the other challenge that I find some of my clients have is they get to a point where they know what they need to do, but for whatever reason, they're reluctant to pull the trigger and do it. And without action, nothing happens, right?
Do you have an idea why that is?
I think it's a fear. There are different fears. Fear of rejection. For example, if you're doing fundraising, you're out asking people to support a cause, and nobody likes to be told no.
Yeah.
I think salespeople have that, and somehow they have to overcome that. And good salespeople understand that the more often they hear no, the more often they're also going to hear yes, because they're asking more people. They're
Yeah.
talking to more people. But that requires a certain mindset that a lot of people don't have. When I was raising money for the hospice project, I had nurses at hospice that would come and say, "Oh, I could never do what you do." And I'm looking at them thinking, well, I could never do what you do. You're helping people end their lives comfortably.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to do. And I did some of it as a volunteer, but I certainly didn't do it at the level they did it. And ironically enough, there were a couple of times I would take a nurse with me when I was going to go talk to a prospective donor. And I would just ask her, I'd say, look, all I'm asking you to do is to share with this person what you do. I'm not asking you to ask for money. I just want you to share with them what it is you do. And if you have a story about a frustrating situation because your patient was in a setting that was difficult to help them with what it is they needed, and a hospice home would help, then share that story. But and they would always do amazingly well with that.
Because they know it.
Yeah. Because that's what they live. You know? And again, I wasn't asking them to ask for the money. That was my job. So, but I think the other fear, interestingly enough, is fear of success. Because now, if you have some success at something, what other people expect of you has grown. They expect you to do better the next time and better and better and better. One of the authors I've read is a guy by the name of David Allen. He wrote a book called Getting Things Done. What a great title for a book, Getting Things Done. But he said one of the challenges you'll have is if you use these practices is the better you get, the better you better get. Because people are going to have higher expectations of you. And I know there's a gentleman that he's retired now, but he was the CEO of one of our local banks several years ago, and he's one of those people that he just gets things done. I mean, I have not talked to him about this, and I probably should. He's actually a neighbor now here where I live, and I would just be curious to know, how is it that you went about that? And some of it is just doing it in the moment. Again, this David Allen talks about, he has what he calls the 2-minute rule. If you're going through a list of things to do and something on that list is going to take less than 2 minutes, don't put it on the list. Just do it. Then it's done. It doesn't even have to be on a list somewhere.
That makes sense.
You just get it done. It's a little bit of the way we handle mail when it comes in. Only handle that piece of mail once. Make a decision in the moment what you're going to do with it. Same thing, how many of us get a gazillion emails?
Yeah.
Now, some of those, I delete a lot of emails, and I'm actually one of my practices I'm doing now, a habit I'm trying to create, is unsubscribing to a bunch of them.
Man, we could all do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it is, I do have to say, I have actually noticed a reduction in the volume of my emails. Not a huge reduction, but some.
Some.
Yeah.
So they'll get to you if they really want.
But ironically enough, the two biggest fears I think that people have is and this sounds really paradoxical, but a fear of failure, but also a fear of success. Because again, that success means, more is going to be expected of me. Or they think, well, that was just a fluke.
They're not worth it.
And that it won't work the next time kind of thing. So, it's kind of a mixed bag. But in the coaching process, what we do is we really dive deep with questioning into why they feel that way. The why is a huge, huge question to ask ourselves as well as our clients about, why certain things happen or why they resist this or why that doesn't work, those types of things. A guy by the name of Simon Sinek wrote a great book called Start With Why. And it really involves, why should anybody work with a coach? Well, because the coach can help them hold themselves accountable to the things they want to make changes with. That's really the bottom line. And if they're not willing to do it, then they're not. Coaching isn't going to help them. That's one of the things I do with coaching clients is, prospective clients, is have an initial, what I call a discovery meeting. And we talk a little bit about what they want to accomplish or what change they want to make in their lives. And we talk about what is it going to take then to make that change. And they'll tell me what steps they think they need to take. And then I'll ask, how committed are you to doing that? On a scale of 1 to 10, if they say anything less than a 10, then I just say, you're not ready for coaching. Yeah. And I've turned down some prospective clients that way, but and then when I don't talk about how much, only because I tailor it for each client, for one thing. But coaching's not inexpensive.
Yeah.
But if you're going to make the change you want to make, it's worth the investment in your resources to make that change, to get that help.
So with this coaching, you're associated with the John Maxwell Leadership Organization.
Yep.
Talk about, I guess, why are you associated with him? What have you found valuable?
Sure. Another great question. So this came about almost accidentally. Actually, the same gentleman I just mentioned about getting things done, the former CEO of a bank, he was on the board of trustees at Adrian College when I worked there. And we were doing a campaign to rebuild our library at the college. And I had to go to his office. It was in Tecumseh, and I went over there to meet with him. And I had just read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Great book, one of the best personal development books I've ever read. And told him how much I appreciated that. Well, he was sitting in front of a bookshelf, and he just kind of swiveled his chair around, and he had this row of 10 books, about 10. I don't know that it was exactly 10, but 10 copies of the same book.
Okay.
So he picked one of them off his shelf and gave it to me. I said, well, you might find this interesting. And it was a book written by John Maxwell. It was my first John Maxwell book. Okay. And so I took it and I read it and I loved it. Well, one of the things at the end of the book was John does a daily little video clip called Minute with Maxwell. And I started watching that. I subscribed to it. I watched it faithfully. Well, down in the corner of the screen was this little thing that kept popping up saying, join the John Maxwell team, join the John Maxwell team, So I had no idea what the John Maxwell team was. So I finally clicked on it and learned that it was a program where you could become a certified speaker, trainer, and coach using his content. And I had in mind, especially as my time at hospice was winding down, I had in mind that someday I wanted to do some kind of coaching or consulting or something. I wasn't even sure exactly what it was going to be. But when I saw this, I thought, well, if I did that, I wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. I wouldn't have to build it from the ground up. It looks to me like there's already something in place. So I clicked on the thing, and we have what we call program advisors that follow up with people that inquire. And the job of the program advisor is to basically sell the program, and so I talked to a program advisor, and she told me what all was involved, told me what it cost, and it wasn't cheap. But it was certainly less than a year of tuition at a college or something, but it was still pretty expensive. And but I went ahead and bit the bullet and jumped in. And I was still at hospice. I still had about 2 years to go at hospice back in 2015. And I went to my first, they do these 2 conferences every year. And in order to become certified, you have to go to a conference, one of the conferences. And then there are other levels you can join and things like that. And I've done it all because I believe so strongly in the program. What they have is an online platform that has all sorts of teaching. They have faculty in several different areas. One is coaching, one is public speaking, one is leadership, one is business building. They actually help you teach you how to build a business. And not only do you have what's already taped and recorded on the online platform, they have live teaching calls every week. And so you can hop on, and those are archived. So if you can't be on a live call, you can listen to it later. And they stay on the line at the end of their teaching to answer questions.
Wow.
It's amazing. I mean, it's just, they just fill you with knowledge and ideas and stuff. And then we go to these conferences that happen twice a year. Now I've joined a couple, there's 3 different levels, and I've joined the other 2 levels. The first level is just being a member of the team, and once you do that, you're a member for life. You don't have to, there's no renewal fee or anything. You're just a member for life. But there's another level called mentorship and a level above that called the executive level, and I've joined both of those. And because of that, I'm able to go back to the conference and not have to pay an additional fee. Now, I still have to get there. I still have to pay for the hotel and stuff like that, but I serve as an ambassador at the conference. And it's an amazing organization. We're now approaching 50,000 people in every country recognized by the United Nations.
Wow.
So when we have these conferences in Orlando, we literally have people from all over the world. And I spent quite a bit of time 2 weeks ago talking to a guy from Africa. And what he does, he's been a member for a few years. And what he does when he comes to the conference, he'll reach out to he's spent enough time in the United States that he's made contacts. He'll do some business with some organizations while he's here to help pay for his trip.
Nice.
And what a great idea, know. And in fact, I've talked to him. Our next conference will be next March, and I said, well, I live in a small town with a couple of educational institutions. I could talk to some people there. Maybe there'd be an interest in having you come and speak to some students. What is it like to do business in Africa? Something like that. Who knows? Yeah. I haven't explored that yet, but I will. I mean, I know people at both institutions. So it's things like that. And when I go to these conferences, they in addition to the John Maxwell faculty, they have other speakers. I just mentioned, James Clear was at this last one. The guy by the name of Ryan Leake was there, but he's also going to be one of the speakers at the Live to Lead program that I host here. Now it's live remote. It's not. He's not going to be in Adrian, but but we're going to pretend that we're in Atlanta. So
through the power of technology.
Exactly. So I did not do a bunch of research into different organizations and decide, well, which one is the best. This one happened to be the one that I kind of fell into, and I have not regretted it for a millisecond. It's an amazing organization. John Maxwell is now 76 years old, and he is still learning. I mean, he talks about learning lunches, and he talks about personal growth. And if you're not growing, you're dying, in his opinion. And I kind of like that philosophy.
Yeah, I was at you mentioned the Live to Lead.
Yeah.
I was there last year, and first time I'd really seen John Maxwell other than a picture, honestly. Yeah, sure. And he's got enough energy for 5 people. Well,
that's what's interesting. So our conference, it's a 3-day conference, but there's a day before the conference starts for those of us who are alumni. They call it Think Tank Day. So John speaks. This one was Sunday. The Think Tank Day was Sunday. Then the conference is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. He speaks at least twice, both days, or twice every day. And he's got as much energy at the end of the 4 days as anybody else in the room. Because I think what he does energizes him. And I've certainly experienced that. All I'm trying to do with my business is I've been blessed beyond measure. I have a good retirement program, and I'm just trying to supplement my retirement stuff a little bit. And I'm also trying to be, I just have a desire. I don't say this to brag. I want to be more philanthropic. And so obviously I charge for what I do, and it's not inexpensive because people won't take it seriously if they're not investing in themselves. My first coaching client, quite frankly, I didn't charge her enough, and she lost interest. Now, part of it was I was nudging her a little out of her comfort zone, I think, and so she got a little nervous about that. My next coaching client charged her much more, and she was showing up like clockwork. Had her accountabilities every time we met. She said, let me tell you what I did. She was so excited and so enthused. And that was rewarding for me, to see her have that kind of enthusiasm about the things that she was changing in her life and John's the same way. I mean, part of what John does, John decided to become a speaker in part. Well, first of all, he'd been a minister, so he was preaching sermons all the time. But he also decided that he could impact more people through public speaking and writing than he did some counseling when he was a minister. Found out he wasn't very good about it because what he would do is he would suggest things for people to do, and they'd come back the next time and they hadn't done it. He was disappointed. So, but through the public speaking, and he also says, I don't want to be a motivational speaker. I want to be a motivational teacher. So that's quite a difference there. If you're not interested in people taking something that you've shared with them and making use of it, putting it to use, if you've just tried to get them charged up and excited about themselves or whatever, and I don't want to say that that's a bad thing,
but that goes away though. That's temporary.
It's very temporary.
Yeah.
And so what I do, I had the opportunity earlier this year. One of the members, I'm in a service club called Civitan, and one of our members is now on the international board, which is kind of cool. And she's responsible. The international board represents certain regions. So she was having a regional conference and asked me to come she wanted me to be the keynote speaker. I said, okay, but just so you know, I'm going to do it more like a workshop than I am just standing up and talking. Because if I just stand up and talk, they won't even be home yet, and they will have forgotten a lot of what I said.
Yeah.
If I do a workshop and they sit down there and write things out and things like that, it's going to have much more impact. So that's where I came up with the Passport to Success idea. Let me have people work through that process or that philosophy with a worksheet. What would this mean to you? Pick one of your goals, and what would a plan for that goal look like, and then what actions then need to be taken. The best plan on the planet isn't worth a hill of beans if you don't act on it. So you got to plan, you got to act, and it wouldn't help to seek some support along the way. That's where a coach or even just colleagues can help. People you work with, and then you're going to run into stumbling blocks along the way. You got to stick to it. And again, I use my running as an example. If you live in Michigan like we do, and you're training for a marathon in April, like the Boston Marathon, you have to be doing some really long runs in January and February.
Which is not fun.
And it is not fun. And you got to stick to it. And I can't think of, that's a great example to share with people.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the salesperson. If you've got a goal of selling so many widgets and that, only 10% of the people are going to say yes, then in order to sell 10 widgets, you got to call 100 people. So you better get started, right? But you got to act on it. And if you know that that's going to be now, can you learn some things to be a more effective salesperson, to maybe make that 10 become 15 or 20 or 25? Sure. Let's work on that. But in the meantime, you got to be making the calls. One of our speakers 2 years ago at Live to Lead was a guy by the name of Ed Milet. He wrote a wonderful book that I gave to my participants last year called The Power of One More. And it's exactly what that is. I got a plan to make 10 sales calls today. Make one more. Make an 11th, If you're trying to build your body up, you're going to do 20 reps, do 21, one more. Things like that. So now it doesn't work with everything because you can overdo that, using the physical as sometimes one more mile is that 1 mile too much that you get injured. And I've had that problem.
One more step in that case.
Exactly. So anyhow, but no, I think getting back to the whole association with John Maxwell, I have found John Maxwell's writing and speaking to be very accessible. His writing is practical. Much of his writing, almost all of his books, at the end of each chapter, there are suggestions on what steps to take to work in this area, to improve yourself in this area. probably the book that I've taught from the most. The other thing that we do is we have the ability to take one of John's books and have a study group around it, and they actually provide us with these downloadable workbooks that we can share with our clients, and good discussion questions, even some fill in the blank stuff to help you. Sometimes just writing it down cements it more. And I've done this now with 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. I just did it. He has a brand new book that came out just in March called The 16 Undeniable Laws of Communication. Oh my gosh, what an amazing book on how to communicate better. And that's really probably John's biggest theme right now, I would say, is quality communication. One of the things that I see as I work with organizations is a lot of times just a lack of clarity in the communication. We make assumptions about what people know or don't know, and we just can't do that. We have to make sure that people understand what it is we're talking about. And this is a key leadership principle. You just have to be clear about what you expect of people. Too often, if I go into an organization, I've not done this a lot, but if I were to go into an organization and just ask some of the people on the front line, how clear are you about what's expected of you? Many people would say I'm clueless. Nobody's ever told me what's expected of me.
Oh. Do you think that's the biggest problem in organizations?
It's one of them.
Right now?
It's certainly one of them. The lack of clarity around expectations. But I think it begins with a vision, having a vision that people understand. But then the other one is value. We serve our people under these set of values. And one of the best books I've read that talks about that is, hang on a second, I gotta look at my bookshelf. It's amazing that I found it that quickly, Kevin. Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. This is the guy that founded Zappos. It's an online shoe company. Mm-hmm. Sadly, Tony died in his late 40s. It's too bad. But he wrote this book called Delivering Happiness. It's the story of the founding of Zappos.
Okay, that was part 1 with Bill. Hope you found that interesting and got something from it. We'll finish up the rest of the conversation with Bill on the next episode. We'll see you then.